The Norse gods were not all-powerful. They lived in constant tension with a terrifying array of supernatural predators. Take Loki. He lived among the gods in Asgard and possessed their brilliant minds, but his blood tied him to Jotunheim, the frozen, hostile land of the giants. This lineage web maps out the secret family Loki kept hidden in that giant realm. It branches into 3 monstrous offspring: Hel, who could turn mortals to stone; the Midgard serpent, a massive reptile; and Fenris, a constantly ravenous wolf. These offspring doubled in size every single day. They were an exponential, unignorable threat to the gods' survival. On this tactical map of the realms, Odin swiftly triaged the threat. He cast Hel into the subterranean underworld and flung the serpent into the endless oceans. Then, inexplicably, he brought the wolf, Fenris, directly into Asgard's center to keep as a pet. This created a crisis. Goddesses were terrified to roam their own grand halls. Worse, Odin was haunted by a prophecy revealing that his ultimate destiny was to be killed by this very wolf. Odin had to neutralize the beast permanently. Yet the absolute laws of Asgard strictly forbade the shedding of blood on its grounds. Execution was impossible. They needed a way to lock him down completely bloodlessly. Thor decided on a brute force approach. He spent all night hammering out an immensely thick iron chain. The gods knew they couldn't just tackle the beast. Instead, they manipulated the wolf's ego. They brought out meat and challenged Fenris to a test of strength, asking if he could snap the heavy links. Fenris willingly let them tie his massive legs together. Then he flexed his muscles. The iron shattered instantly. Thor went back to his forge. He stayed up another full night constructing a second restraint with far thicker, vastly more complex links. When presented, Fenris saw deep fear in the god's eyes. He knew breaking this chain would secure his legend across the heavens. He agreed to the bindings, struggled briefly, and snapped the metal again. Brute force had failed. Physical engineering cannot outpace a monster whose power scales infinitely. Odin realized they had an engineering problem they couldn't solve. He outsourced it. He sent a messenger deep underground to the dwarves, the master craftsmen of the realms. The dwarves abandoned metal entirely. They forged an enchanted, unbreakable restraint that looked exactly like a delicate, soft silken string. The gods returned and presented this tiny strand for a third test. Fenris stared. He knew if he broke it, it would prove nothing to his legend, but if he failed, he would be trapped forever. He refused to be bound unless the gods provided physical collateral. He demanded that one of them place their right hand inside his jaws while the binding was tied. The gods' attempt at clean, psychological warfare had totally collapsed. By trying to outsmart the monster, they forced themselves into a high-stakes hostage situation. Complete silence fell over the gods. Nobody stepped forward. Even Thor refused to risk the hand he needed to swing his hammer. Finally, Tyr stepped forward. He walked up to the beast and slid his right arm directly between the wolf's teeth. The gods quickly wrapped the silken ribbon around the wolf and tied the knots. Fenris began to thrash, but the magic engaged immediately. The more violently he fought, the tighter the enchantment bound him. Realizing he was permanently trapped, the wolf foamed with rage. He clamped his jaws shut, severing Tyr's arm at the wrist. The gods drove a hole through a massive rock on an isolated island, threaded the binding through it, and wedged the wolf's jaws open with a sword. He would remain pinned there until the end of days. The gods had secured Asgard, but the cost was carved in Tyr's arm. They learned that delaying the end of the world always requires a permanent physical sacrifice.